The transport ship, Celestial Wanderer, hummed through the void between star systems, carrying passengers from dozens of different species to the Outer Rim colonies. In the main passenger lounge, beings of all shapes and sizes filled the comfortable seating pods, but one corner remained conspicuously empty. Zephyra sat alone, her 4 arms folded across her chest as she stared out the viewport at the swirling colors of hyperspace. Her crystalline skin caught the ambient light, casting prismatic reflections that danced across the nearby walls. Other passengers would glance in her direction, then quickly look away, whispering among themselves in hushed tones. The Kthari female had boarded 3 days ago at the Nexus station, and since then nobody had dared to sit within 10 meters of her position. It wasn't her appearance that frightened them, though her species was known for their imposing 7-foot height and naturally armored exterior. No, it was something far worse than physical intimidation. Zephyra was a survivor of the Kepler-7 incident. 2 years ago, her entire research team had vanished without a trace while investigating ancient ruins on that cursed world. She had been found 3 weeks later, catatonic and alone in the ruins, with no memory of what had happened to her 12 colleagues. The official report listed it as unexplained disappearances, but rumors spread quickly through the galactic community. Some said she had killed her team in a psychotic break. Others whispered about alien possession or mind control. A few claimed she had made a deal with whatever dark entities inhabited those ruins. The truth was, nobody knew what had really happened, and Zephyra herself couldn't remember. That uncertainty made her a pariah among spacefaring communities. She had tried to return to her work as an archaeologist, but no university would hire her. Research expeditions wouldn't accept her applications. Even commercial transport companies hesitated to book her passage, though they couldn't legally refuse service based on unproven accusations. The isolation was crushing. Zephyra had once been a respected academic, known for her groundbreaking discoveries about prehistoric civilizations. She had friends across multiple species, colleagues who valued her insights and enjoyed her company. Now, she traveled alone, avoided by everyone who recognized her name or face. As the ship's announcement system crackled to life, announcing the approach to their next destination, Zephyra noticed movement in her peripheral vision. A human male was making his way through the lounge, carrying a small duffel bag and what appeared to be a flight jacket draped over his arm. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most other species viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. They were known for being unpredictable, sometimes showing remarkable compassion, and other times displaying shocking ruthlessness. This particular human looked to be middle-aged by their standards, with graying hair and weathered features that spoke of countless hours spent in spacecraft cockpits. His movements were precise and economical, the kind of body language that came from years of flying in zero-gravity environments. Zephyra watched as the human surveyed the available seating. There were plenty of empty spots throughout the lounge, clusters of seats where he could sit comfortably without disturbing anyone. She expected him to choose one of those areas, like every other passenger had done. Instead, he walked directly toward her section. The conversations around the lounge began to quiet as other passengers noticed the human's trajectory. A Voltan trader actually stood up from his seat as if preparing to warn the newcomer about the danger of sitting near the cursed Kthari. But the human either didn't notice or didn't care about the reactions around him. He approached the empty seat directly across from Zephyra's position and gestured politely toward it. "Is this spot taken?" he asked in clear, unaccented galactic standard. Zephyra stared at him for a long moment, unsure how to respond. It had been months since anyone had spoken directly to her, let alone asked permission to sit nearby. Her voice felt rusty when she finally managed to speak. "No," she said quietly. No one ever sits there. The human nodded and settled into the seat, placing his duffel bag on the floor beside him and draping his jacket over the armrest. He didn't seem nervous or uncomfortable. If anything, he appeared completely at ease, as if sitting next to her was the most natural thing in the galaxy. "Marcus Chen," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I'm a cargo pilot, heading out to the frontier sectors." Zephyra hesitated, then reached out with one of her 4 hands to briefly clasp his. Human skin was surprisingly warm compared to her crystalline exterior. "Zephyra," she replied, not bothering to give her surname. Most beings recognized her first name anyway. "Nice to meet you, Zephyra." Marcus settled back in his seat and pulled out a small data pad. "Long journey ahead of us. Mind if I do some reading?" The simplicity of the interaction caught her off guard. He wasn't asking probing questions about her past or making nervous small talk. He wasn't staring at her with fear or suspicion. He was just being normal. "Of course not," she managed. As Marcus focused on his datapad, Zephyra found herself stealing glances at him. His flight jacket bore the insignia of the Terran Merchant Marine, along with several mission patches she didn't recognize. The jacket itself was well worn, with scuff marks and small repairs that spoke of extensive use in harsh conditions. Around them, the other passengers gradually returned to their conversations, though many continued to cast nervous glances in their direction. Zephyra had grown accustomed to being the object of fearful curiosity, but now she worried that Marcus might become guilty by association. "You should know," she said quietly. "Most people avoid sitting near me for a reason." Marcus looked up from his datapad and met her gaze directly. His eyes were a warm brown color, and they held no trace of fear or judgment. "I've heard the stories," he said simply. "Lost team, unexplained circumstances, no memory of what happened. Sounds like you've been through hell." Zephyra's 4 hands clenched involuntarily. "Then why are you sitting here?" "Because," Marcus said, returning to his reading, "I've learned that the people everyone else avoids are usually the ones most worth knowing." The rest of the journey passed in comfortable silence. Marcus read his technical manuals while Zephyra watched the stars wheel past the viewport. Occasionally, he would offer her some of his human coffee from a thermos, which she politely declined. The bitter beverage was too intense for Cathari taste receptors. When they reached the transfer station at Kepler Junction, most of the passengers disembarked to catch connecting flights to various destinations. Zephyra was scheduled to continue on the same ship to the Outer Rim, where she hoped to find work as a general laborer in the mining colonies. It wasn't the career she had trained for, but it was honest work that didn't require background checks or references. As Marcus gathered his belongings, Zephyra felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Their brief companionship had been the first normal social interaction she'd experienced in 2 years. "Safe travels," she said, meaning it. Marcus paused at her words and studied her face for a moment. "Actually," he said, "I'm curious about something. You mentioned you were an archaeologist before. Everything happened. Is that what you'd want to go back to, if you could?" The question hit her harder than she expected. "More than anything," she admitted. "But no one will work with me now. Too much risk, they say. Too many unknowns." What if someone was willing to take that risk? Zephyra's crystalline features shifted slightly. The Cathari equivalent of raising an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Marcus shouldered his duffel bag and pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. "I run cargo to some pretty remote places. Frontier worlds, archaeological sites, research stations. Sometimes I need a consultant who knows about ancient civilizations and can help identify whether a dig site is worth the transportation costs." He handed her the card. It was simple, printed on real paper in the human tradition. "Marcus Chen, Independent Cargo Services, with contact information and a small logo depicting a spacecraft. "It's not steady work," he continued, "and some of the destinations can be dangerous. But if you're interested in getting back into archaeology, even as a freelance consultant, it might be a start." Zafira stared at the card, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You would trust me to work with you, even after hearing about Kepler-7? "Everyone deserves a second chance," Marcus said. "Besides, I've spent enough time in dangerous places to know that the universe is full of mysteries we don't understand. Whatever happened to your team, I doubt it was your fault." The words hit her like a physical blow. In 2 years, no one had ever said they didn't blame her for the disappearances. Everyone assumed she must have done something wrong, even if they couldn't prove it. "Think about it," Marcus said, starting toward the airlock. "If you decide you're interested, send me a message. I've got to run out to the Veil Nebula in about 6 weeks. Could use someone who knows about pre-contact civilizations." As he walked away, Zephyra clutched the business card in her primary hands and felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. The ship continued its journey toward the Outer Rim colonies, but now Zephyra's thoughts were no longer focused on finding menial labor in the mines. Instead, she found herself remembering her old passion for uncovering the secrets of ancient worlds. Maybe, just maybe, her career wasn't over after all. 6 weeks later, Zephyra stood on the cargo platform of Meridian Station, her travel pack slung across her back and Marcus's business card worn soft from handling. She had sent him a message 2 days after their first meeting, and his response had been immediate and enthusiastic. Now, as she watched the various ships docked at the station's loading bays, she wondered if she was making the right decision. The Aurora's dream was smaller than she had expected. A mid-sized cargo hauler with the sturdy, practical design favored by independent operators. Its hull showed the scars of countless journeys through asteroid fields and planetary atmospheres, but the ship looked well-maintained and reliable. Marcus emerged from the main cargo bay as she approached, wiping his hands on a maintenance rag. He wore the same flight jacket she remembered, along with practical work clothes that had seen better days. "Zephyra!" he called out, genuine warmth in his voice. "Glad you decided to take the job. Come aboard. Let me show you around." The ship's interior was cramped but efficiently organized. Every surface served multiple purposes, and Marcus had clearly spent years perfecting the layout for maximum functionality. The cargo bay took up most of the vessel's volume, currently loaded with supplies destined for a research outpost in the Veil Nebula. "Your quarters are here," Marcus said, indicating a small but comfortable cabin near the ship's center. "Good shielding from cosmic radiation, and the artificial gravity generators are most stable in this section. The archaeological equipment you requested is stored in compartment 7. Zephyra was impressed by his attention to detail. When she had accepted the job, she had provided a list of instruments and reference materials she would need for evaluating potential dig sites. Marcus had acquired everything on the list, including some items she hadn't expected him to find outside of major academic institutions. "This must have cost a fortune," she said, examining a high-end mineral composition analyzer. "Consider it an investment in future discoveries," Marcus replied. "Besides, I've learned that having the right tools makes all the difference between success and failure." As they prepared for departure, Marcus briefed her on their destination. The Veil Nebula was a region of space known for its spectacular beauty and its numerous planetary systems that had once hosted advanced civilizations. Most of these worlds were now dead or dying, their inhabitants long vanished, but they often contained ruins and artifacts of immense archaeological value. "Our client is Dr. Sarah Voss," Marcus explained as he ran through the pre-flight checklist. "Human xenoarchaeologist, been working in the Veil for about 10 years. She's discovered evidence of a civilization that might predate anything we've found so far. But she needs expert analysis to confirm her findings." Zephyra settled into the co-pilot seat, grateful that Marcus seemed to assume she was competent rather than treating her like potentially dangerous cargo. What kind of evidence? Structural materials that don't match any known technology, energy signatures that suggest some form of advanced power source, and symbols that don't correspond to any cataloged writing systems. Marcus initiated the launch sequence, and the ship's engines hummed to life. Could be nothing. Could be the discovery of the century. The journey through hyperspace gave Zephyra time to review the preliminary data Dr. Voss had transmitted. What she saw made her primary heart race with excitement. The architectural fragments showed construction techniques that were both sophisticated and completely unfamiliar. The metal alloys contained elements in combinations that shouldn't have been stable, yet somehow maintained their integrity across millennia. Most intriguing were the symbol fragments. They weren't carved or etched into the surfaces, but seemed to be integral to the materials themselves, as if the meaning and the medium were somehow unified. Zephyra had never seen anything like them in her extensive studies of pre-contact civilizations. "Marcus," she said, looking up from her analysis tablet, "if these readings are accurate, this could be evidence of a completely unknown species. Something that achieved technological advancement along entirely different principles than any civilization we've encountered." Marcus glanced over from the pilot station, where he was monitoring their course through the nebula's charged particle fields. "That significant?" "Revolutionary," Zephyra confirmed. "Most archaeological discoveries fill in gaps in our understanding of known civilizations. This could represent an entirely new branch of galactic history." The enthusiasm in her voice surprised her. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like herself again, the passionate researcher who had once been respected throughout the archaeological community. Marcus seemed to notice the change as well, because he smiled and nodded approvingly. "That's what I was hoping to hear," he said. "Dr. Voss will be pleased to have someone who appreciates the significance of her work." They dropped out of hyperspace near a small reddish planet designated as Vale 47 in the star charts. The world orbited a dying star, its surface barely warm enough to maintain a thin atmosphere. According to the navigation data, Dr. Voss's research outpost was located in the planet's northern hemisphere, near what appeared to be extensive ruins of an ancient city. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, Zephyra pressed her face to the viewport and gasped at what she saw below. The ruins stretched for dozens of kilometers in every direction, far larger than the preliminary surveys had indicated. Massive structures rose from the barren landscape like the bones of some incomprehensibly vast creature. Their alien geometry both beautiful and unsettling. Dr. Voss wasn't exaggerating, Marcus said, piloting the ship toward a landing pad near the research outpost. "This place is incredible." The outpost itself was a collection of prefabricated modules connected by enclosed walkways, designed to provide a safe environment for human researchers in the planet's harsh conditions. As they touched down, Zephyra could see several figures emerging from the main building to greet them. Dr. Voss proved to be a compact, energetic woman in her 50s, with the kind of intense focus that Zephyra recognized in dedicated field researchers. She was accompanied by 2 graduate students and a security specialist, all of whom seemed genuinely excited about their visitor's arrival. "Marcus, thank you for making such good time," Dr. Voss said as they disembarked. "And you must be Zephyra. I have to say, when Marcus mentioned he was bringing a Cathari archaeologist, I was thrilled. Your species has some of the best pattern recognition abilities in known space." Zephyra was caught off guard by the researcher's enthusiasm. She had expected wariness, perhaps even recognition of her infamous reputation. Instead, Dr. Voss seemed to view her simply as a qualified professional. "I'm honored to be here," Zephyra replied carefully. "The preliminary data you sent was fascinating." "Wait until you see the site itself," one of the graduate students said eagerly. We've uncovered chambers that seem to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. As the group made their way toward the outpost, Dr. Voss briefed them on the current state of the excavation. Her team had been working methodically through the ruins for 6 months, using non-invasive scanning techniques to map the structures before beginning physical excavation. The challenge, she explained, is that conventional archaeological methods don't seem applicable here. The materials don't respond to standard dating techniques, the structural engineering follows principles we don't understand, and the artifacts we've found seem to serve purposes we can't even guess at. Inside the outpost's main laboratory, Zephyra examined the artifacts Dr. Voss's team had recovered. Each one was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, but their function remained completely mysterious. There were crystalline objects that resonated with harmonic frequencies when exposed to certain types of energy, metallic sculptures that seemed to shift their configuration based on the viewer's position, and stone tablets covered with the same integrated symbols she had seen in the preliminary data. "These symbols," Zephyra said, running her specialized sensors over one of the tablets. "They're not just writing. They're some kind of multi-dimensional information storage system." Dr. Voss leaned forward eagerly. "Can you decode them?" "Not yet," Zephyra admitted, "but I think I might be able to develop a translation matrix if I can establish the underlying mathematical principles. Cathari cognition is naturally suited for multidimensional pattern recognition." Over the next 3 days, Zephyra threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including herself. She worked 18-hour days, taking breaks only when Marcus physically insisted that she eat and rest. The human pilot seemed to understand her passion for the work, providing quiet support without interfering with her research process. Gradually, patterns began to emerge from the alien symbols. The writing system was incredibly sophisticated, encoding multiple layers of meaning within each character. But more than that, the symbols seemed to be linked to the materials themselves in ways that suggested the entire civilization had integrated information storage into their basic construction techniques. "It's not just writing," Zephyra explained to the assembled team during one of their evening briefings. "It's a form of crystallized knowledge. These people, or whatever they were, didn't just record information. They embedded it into the physical structure of their reality." Marcus looked up from the supply inventory he had been reviewing. "You mean the buildings themselves are some kind of library?" "More than that," Zephyra said, her excitement building. "I think the entire city might be a single massive data storage and processing system. A civilization that achieved technological advancement by learning to manipulate information at the quantum level." Dr. Voss was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "Do you think you can access this information?" Zephyra hesitated. The prospect was incredibly exciting, but it also triggered memories of her last major discovery. Kepler-7 had also involved mysterious alien technology that she hadn't fully understood before it was too late. "I think I can," she said slowly. "But we should proceed very carefully. Unknown alien technology can be dangerous." It was Marcus who spoke up, his voice calm and reassuring. "What kind of safety protocols would you recommend?" The question reminded Zephyra that she wasn't working alone this time. Unlike the Kepler-7 expedition, where academic pressure had pushed them to take unnecessary risks, this team seemed genuinely interested in her professional judgment. "We start small," she said, feeling more confident. "Single symbols, isolated from the larger network. Build up our understanding gradually before attempting to access larger data structures." As they planned their approach for the following day's work, Zephyra realized that something fundamental had changed in her relationship with archaeological research. For the first time since Kepler-7, she felt like a valued member of a team, rather than a dangerous liability to be managed. The breakthrough came on the 7th day of their collaboration. Zephyra had been working with a small fragment containing only 3 of the alien symbols when her translation matrix finally achieved coherence. The symbols didn't just convey meaning, they activated dormant pathways in the crystalline material, creating a brief window into the vanished civilization's knowledge. What she saw in that moment changed everything. The beings who had built this city hadn't been biological in any sense that the galactic community would recognize. They had been living information, consciousness given form through manipulation of quantum fields and crystallized thought. Their technology wasn't built, it was grown, evolved, dreamed into existence through sheer force of collective will. And they hadn't vanished. They had transcended. "The entire ruins," Zephyra explained to the gathered team that evening, her voice trembling with awe. "They're not just a city, they're a chrysalis. This civilization spent millennia preparing for a transformation that would allow them to exist as pure consciousness, unbound by physical reality." Dr. Voss leaned forward, fascination and concern warring in her expression. "Are you saying they're still here? Still alive in some form?" "Not alive in any way we understand," Zephyra replied, "but their knowledge remains, encoded in every stone and metal beam of this place. They left it behind as a gift for whoever might follow in their footsteps." Marcus had been quietly listening from his position near the laboratory's main console. "A gift that comes with instructions, I hope?" Zephyra's crystalline features shifted in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Actually, yes. They were remarkably thoughtful about the whole process. The knowledge is structured to be accessible to developing consciousness, with built-in safeguards to prevent dangerous misuse." The safeguards were what had been missing on Kepler-7, she realized. That expedition had stumbled upon raw alien technology without understanding its nature or purpose. Here, the vanished beings had deliberately crafted their legacy to be safe for discovery by younger species. Over the following weeks, Zephyra worked with Dr. Voss's team to carefully extract and catalog the information stored within the ruins. The process required a delicate balance, accessing enough data to understand the civilization's achievements without triggering responses that might be beyond their ability to handle. The discoveries were staggering. The crystallized consciousness had achieved mastery over fundamental forces that the galactic community was only beginning to understand. They had developed technologies for manipulating space-time, for converting matter directly into energy and back again, for creating stable artificial realities indistinguishable from natural physics. But more importantly, they had learned to do all of this without destroying themselves or their environment. Every advancement had been carefully balanced against its potential consequences, every new capability tested exhaustively before implementation. "It's a master class in responsible technological development," Dr. Voss observed during one of their evening discussions. "They've essentially left us a handbook for avoiding the pitfalls that destroy most advancing civilizations." Marcus had taken to joining these discussions, his practical pilot's perspective often providing valuable insights into the more theoretical discoveries. He had an intuitive grasp of systems thinking that complemented Zephyra's pattern recognition abilities. "The question is," he said one evening as they reviewed the day's translations, "what do we do with all this knowledge? It's too important to keep secret, but too dangerous to release without proper preparation." Zephyra had been grappling with the same question. The information they were uncovering could revolutionize galactic civilization, but it could also be catastrophically misused if it fell into the wrong hands. "The beings who left this knowledge faced the same dilemma," she said finally. "Their solution was to embed the information in a form that requires genuine understanding to access. You can't just steal their technology. You have to grow into the wisdom necessary to use it responsibly." Dr. Voss nodded thoughtfully. "A natural selection process for consciousness itself." As their work continued, Zephyra found herself changing in unexpected ways. The careful, methodical approach required by the alien knowledge was teaching her patience and precision she had never possessed as a younger researcher. More importantly, working as part of a supportive team was healing wounds she hadn't even realized she carried. Marcus noticed the change as well. During quiet moments between research sessions, he would sometimes comment on how different she seemed from the isolated, frightened being he had met on the transport ship. "You're remembering who you used to be," he said one evening as they watched the alien city's spires catch the light of the setting sun. "No," Zephyra replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I'm becoming who I was meant to be." The crystallized consciousness had left one final gift embedded in the deepest layers of their data structures, a complete analysis of what had happened on Kepler-7. The ruins there had contained fragments of their technology, but without the context necessary for safe interaction. Zephyra's team had triggered defensive systems that had transported them into a parallel dimensional space where they remained alive but unreachable by conventional means. "They're not dead," Zephyra explained to Marcus and Dr. Voss, tears of relief flowing down her crystalline features. "They're trapped, but alive, and now we know how to bring them back." The rescue operation would require resources and expertise far beyond what their small team could provide, but the galactic archaeological community would undoubtedly support such an effort once they understood the situation. For the first time in 2 years, Zephyra allowed herself to hope that her missing colleagues might return home. When their initial survey of the ruins was complete, Dr. Voss offered Zephyra a permanent position with her research team. The work was exactly what she had dreamed of returning to: challenging, meaningful, and conducted with proper respect for both scientific method and potential consequences. But it was Marcus who provided the opportunity that truly appealed to her. "I'm thinking of expanding my operation," he said, as they prepared to depart Vale 47. "There are dozens of archaeological sites throughout the frontier that could benefit from this kind of careful, collaborative research. I could use a permanent partner who understands both the science and the risks." The proposal was everything Zephyra had hoped for and more: independent research, meaningful work, and partnership with someone who had proven himself trustworthy when everyone else had written her off. "Partners," she said, extending one of her 4 hands toward him. "I like the sound of that." As the Aurora's dream lifted off from the ancient ruins, Zephyra looked back at the alien city one final time. The crystallized consciousness had achieved transcendence, but they had also chosen to leave something behind for those who would follow. It was, she realized, the ultimate expression of hope, faith that younger species would eventually prove worthy of such gifts. 6 months later, the galactic archaeological community was still reeling from the implications of their discoveries. The knowledge contained within the Vale 47 ruins was being carefully studied and disseminated by an international council of researchers with strict protocols to ensure responsible development. Zephyra and Marcus had become something of a legend in their own right: the human pilot who chose compassion over caution, and the Kthari archaeologist who found redemption among the stars. Their partnership had already led to 3 more significant discoveries, each carefully handled with the wisdom they had gained from their first collaboration. The rescue mission to Kepler-7 was scheduled to launch in another 6 months, with Zephyra serving as the lead consultant on parallel dimensional extraction procedures. Her missing colleagues would finally come home, and with them would come vindication for the researcher who had never stopped believing in the importance of their work. But perhaps most importantly, Zephyra had learned that the universe was full of second chances for those brave enough to accept them. Sometimes, all it took was one person willing to sit down next to you when everyone else turned away. As she settled into the co-pilot seat of the Aurora's dream for their next expedition, Zephyra reflected on how much her life had changed since that day on the transport ship. She had started that journey as a pariah, carrying the weight of unexplained tragedy and professional disgrace. She was ending it as half of the galaxy's most respected archaeological partnership, with discoveries that would reshape galactic civilization and the knowledge that her missing friends would soon be safe. Marcus had been right that day when he said that the people everyone else avoids are usually the ones most worth knowing. Sometimes it just takes a quiet human aviator to remind the universe that everyone deserves a chance to prove their worth.